Welcome to the S.O.A.P Bible Study Series from Oak Tree Community Church in South Bend, Indiana. We have been working our way through the book of Numbers in the Old Testament, and this is our final week.
We're so close to the end.
So close.
I'm always so happy when we start a new one, and I'm so happy when we end with a book.
Well, we have 6 chapters to finish this week.
It's still a sprint.
But we're going to skip 2.
Yep.
And we'll tell you why. But we're doing chapters 32, 33, 35, 36.
Yep. Those are the ones.
Those are the ones. We're skipping 31. Why are we skipping 31 and 34?
Because you did not put them in the readings. Well, 31 is about war against the Midianites.
Right.
And we've seen for the past number of weeks that these guys are a pain.
Yeah.
And these guys are a problem. And we also saw last week where they hired a sorcerer, right, to try to condemn Israel. And that didn't work, so they moved on to Plan B, and Plan B was to intermarry.
Yeah.
And that wasn't working either, and God has had enough.
And so they went to war with Midian, and Midian was not letting them through the land, and sort of like the Moabites and Edomites, they're just trying to get on the highway so that they could get into Canaan. So chapter 31, go to war with the Midianites and beat them.
Right, soundly. Right. Yeah, very soundly. And then chapter 34, in the Promised Land, they're defining the borders, but then they're also appointing officials.
Which is exciting reading.
So you are welcome.
It's like watching the election results to see who's going to get what position. Yeah. And from the tribe of Dan.
Yeah, right.
All right, so the 4 chapters that we are doing this week, there's some really good stuff in here, actually.
Yeah, there actually is. And we start with chapter 32, and right away it's kind of bizarre to me because they have they came out of Egypt. It's been 40 years. Right. God's leading them. God's telling them what to do. I'm showing you the promised land where you're going to go. And they're there. They're right
ready,
there.
They're ready to cross the Jordan River.
And 2 tribes say, "I like it here."
Can we stay on this side of the Jordan instead of going over the other
I don't understand. Now, what I do understand is they could see the land. They're physically there. It was great for their, goats and sheep and everything. But God promised over here.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you at least go look? Wouldn't you go see?
Well, they had a look. The spies had a look earlier.
Yeah, but that's a different kind
of.
That's also a different kind of look.
Yeah.
I mean, how big are the people in there and everything? So the big problem is 2 of the tribes were saying we don't want to go in.
Yeah.
And now it's a problem because now you cut your army by 2/13,
right?
A sixth,
right?
And so there had to be big discussions around it, and it ended up being okay. You guys can take this land outside here, but you're still going to attack with us.
Yeah. So basically, remember the census was men aged 20 and older who could fight in the army, so they knew what their army was. And Moses said, "Why would you think that you could come all this way and then just park on the east side of the Jordan River and not have to
say I'm done?"
Say I'm done, right? And they said, and I love it because it says, verse 16, "Then they came very close to him and said." So it's like, "What, are you talking to me?" I mean, you think something's gonna happen, and they're like, "That's not what we're saying. We want to build cities. We want to protect our families and our stuff here. But our men will go in with you. We will fight with you. We will stay with you until the land is clear. Yeah. And then we'll come back home. We just don't want land in there. We want to stay here. We like it here."
Yeah. Doesn't it seem God, not that he isn't present, he didn't seem to have a voice here.
I don't think. Yeah.
Which was seemed to be odd to me.
Yeah, he really didn't. Moses' whole point was basically swear to it that you're not going to leave early, cut and run.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I'm committing this army. If you guys cut and leave, we're in a lot of trouble.
Right. And you're right. I mean, God didn't. And apparently, God doesn't seem to care. If he's given them this land, but if they want to live just across the river. I mean, literally, it's just across the river. They're still all together, sort of. Big deal. Modern day Jordan. modern northern Jordan is where they are.
All right. So that's chapter 32.
Yeah.
Chapter 33, Moses seems to be doing a recap. And he's naming a bunch of places, and let's see, he lists 42 places, and I think half of them don't seem to appear elsewhere. So this is the only thing that we know, but it's kind of from Egypt where they stopped on the way. So he's just kind of documenting the summer vacation, that happened.
I think the cool thing about this is not that we know these places, not that we, hey, let's look on the map to see their specific route, because I don't even think some of these places we even know where they are anymore.
Right.
But we
kind
sort
of
of
draw a straight line between.
Yeah.
I know these two places,
Right.
so it's got to be on this
It's
one.
got to be somewhere on the route, right? Route 66,
Yeah.
right? I think the cool thing is that sometimes we think, they wandered for 40 years in the desert, like they never sat down.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And here, they moved and camped for a while, and moved and camped for a while, and they were nomads in the desert. They were just they were wanderers, but they maybe they stayed there for a couple of weeks or a month or a couple of months. Maybe they or whatever. If they were there, if they were wandering for, let's say, the 38 to 39 years, and you said that there are 40 some odd places listed, out of the 40 years, Mount Sinai, they were there for 1 year.
Right.
So how many other places were they there for a long
period of time?
Yeah.
Good point. So I see the book of Exodus, because the book of Exodus and Numbers have a lot of parallels between them.
Yeah.
I see Exodus being written to God's glory from a more godly point of view, and Numbers from more of a man point of view.
Yeah.
So you're going to document where you're at. Then we went here, then we went here, then we went here.
It's almost like Moses' journal.
Yeah, exactly.
And we sort of think of that as the whole thing, but this chapter especially was, and we stayed here. The only thing that's missing was, for how long?
Yeah.
Did we stay? And that would have been fun to know.
He seems to be documenting it for posterity.
Right.
Because there really isn't a whole lot else in there.
Yeah. And it's interesting. It's really about half of the first third, of the chapter really gets them to Sinai. The first 14, 15 verses gets them to Sinai. And he's very detailed about those. We went 3 days, and then we were there for a little bit, and there were 12 fountains of water and 70 palm trees. That's Exodus. And then we did this, and now we're at Sinai. But he didn't say we were there for a year. We have to get that from elsewhere. Yeah. By the way, just one thought. You had mentioned 2 tribes. Because there were only 2 tribes in chapter 32 who said, we want to do this. They were joined by another half tribe. So Manasseh ended up being split across the Jordan River. Half of the tribe of Manasseh stayed on the east side of the Jordan. Half of them went in and actually took land in the promised land, Canaan.
Is that Joseph's?
Yeah.
Son?
Yeah, okay. Joseph's. It was actually Joseph's older son. Ephraim is the younger son, but when Jacob adopted them into his family as sons in place of Joseph, he switched his hands, and Manasseh, the older, became the young, sort of like the Jacob and Esau, right? The older will serve the younger. So Ephraim, even though he was younger, was the much larger tribe. And so in the context, sometimes Manasseh is called Joseph, the tribe of Joseph, or the Josephites. Sometimes Ephraim, sometimes together they're like Joseph, depending on the list of the.
Is Ephraim in bad light in some places?
Yeah.
Is that the?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Ephraim was Ephraim is another name for Israel sometimes. So if you have Israel and the Judah for the northern and southern tribes, Ephraim was a large part of. It's a large tribe, and that's where Samaria was, and that's where the worship center for the northern tribes happened. The golden calf and the other stuff. Not the golden calf in Exodus, but the golden calf in Kings.
Chapter 35, here's where we start to see the rules coming into place for the promised land, which makes sense. Hey, you're going in. Here's what we need to be doing. So there's a bunch in there. Just a couple things I picked out. We know that the Levites don't get land for themselves.
Right.
but they do get areas.
Yeah.
They get land as part of towns.
Yeah.
Or towns as part of land.
So they never got. So all of the other tribes actually got tribal land. This is where you live,
all
and we'll
continuous
chop it up into the families and the clans, right? The Levites were for lack of a better term, the pastors of the nation.
Right.
And whereas the priests actually served at the tabernacle, the other Levites, their main job was when they were moving, whatever,
and carrying,
and serving at the tabernacle and later the temple, but they served on a rotation. So what do they do with the rest of their time, the rest of their year, right? So they basically, God had them spread out throughout the nation so that they could help adjudicate issues, arbitrate issues, that sort of thing, instead of having to come all the way to the capital, to the priests or whoever. The Levites did that throughout the land. So that was pretty nice. And it says that they got, 48 towns across the 12 tribes.
Right. So different areas, like you said, so this would have been their town, though, right? With Levites in there.
Yeah.
So does that still hold true today?
The land of Israel is so different today. You've got Arabs living there. You've got some other tribal lands. You've got what's called the West Bank of the Jordan River, which is Samaria. I don't know how much of that is actually kept up today. It will be in the millennium.
Right.
It will revert back to the way it was supposed to be. But today, I don't know how much of that's really kept up. I don't know how, we've got the cities of refuge coming up here, 3 on either side of, 6 of them, but 3 on either side of the Jordan. I don't think any of that's kept up today.
So refugee cities. So the idea is, in the event that there was an unintentional death, there was a place a person could go where they would be safe.
Yeah.
Kind of an interesting concept, and we think, how often would this happen? But enough to fill up 6 cities. So
it needed to be.
But it was also much more farmers, handwork, clearing land. So a lot more dangerous than what we have today by far.
Yeah, and it's understandable. The examples that are in here. If you actually murder somebody, then you need to be executed. I mean, I think this is really interesting that God kept capital punishment as a rule of law. I mean, if you murder somebody, that goes all the way back to Genesis 9. But he said, let's say you're throwing a rock that's big enough to kill a man, but you didn't intend to throw it at somebody, and it hits and kills them anyway. Okay, you're not liable for that. They walked into your rock throwing path, whatever.
Right. But you do have to make a rule, right? Because punishment is death.
Yeah.
Where's the line?
Right. And I think that's really cool that God says, that doesn't count. Yeah. If it's in fact in Leviticus, and so if it's self-defense, it doesn't count. If you kill somebody in self-defense, no, you're not a murderer. Right. If you accidentally, today we would call it negligent homicide, we would call it manslaughter, we would call it and, all of these different things. It doesn't count as murder, and God is the one who says don't murder because people are in the image of God. So the fact that he recognizes that accidents happen,
Yeah.
So, but the family is still out for revenge.
Right.
And they're bloodthirsty.
Right. So
you killed my father. Prepare to die.
Yeah.
It basically is the thing.
Right. So removing that person certainly takes them out of their world, but it's also, there's a safety feature in there, and there's hope of.
So they have to live in the city of refuge, and this is really interesting. And I thought about this for a long time, trying to figure. I didn't read a bunch of commentaries or anything, but because I figured there should be some kind of logic to it.
Right.
They have to go to a city of, if they can get to the city of refuge. I mean, they're literally running for their lives. If they can get to the city of refuge, then the avenger can't get to them. Right. The family can't get to them. They have to stay in the city of refuge until the current high priest dies. If they came out of the city of refuge, they're fair game. But once the high priest dies, once the guy who is in charge of the law of that generation, basically, once he dies, then they are free to leave, go back to their family, and if somebody tries to take revenge, then they are considered murderers, and then they would be executed.
So that could be a year to 50 years, right?
Right.
However,
Yep. There's no way to know.
Yeah, exactly. Interesting.
I think.
So yeah, what do you?
So my opinion, my speculation is that it fits sort of with the concept of the Jubilee year when everything gets.
It's kind of wiped.
Right, yeah. Land
Wiped
goes
clean.
back, debts are wiped clean. And so they didn't have to wait for the Jubilee year because then that could be up to 50 years. Right? But a high priest is going to be more likely to die sooner than 50 years, and you get your life back.
I would also think that the high priest would certainly be informed about each one of these people.
It can't happen all the time,
And
right?
yeah, even though there's 6 cities, it's not going to happen that much. And when that person is gone, not that nobody knows about it anymore or remembers it, but like you said, it's kind of a wiping it clean.
Yeah. I think it's just yet another amazing example of grace in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
We think of the law, and the New Testament tells us that, where law is, there's not grace, and where grace is, there's not law. But we take that to an extreme sometimes. God is a gracious God even when he gives law. And in the law, we see this. God says, listen, I know accidents happen. Here's the provision I'm going to make for you. And I just love that.
Yeah.
I just think that's great.
Yeah, I think the next one in chapter 36 also feeds into grace. So it's another problem that was happening, and it was a big deal. So if a woman has land, or woman's married to a man, the man dies, she inherits whatever. It's what happens next, because if she remarries, now the new husband
Soaks up the land,
yeah.
right.
So the land, the name, everything leaves.
Right.
And, it's like, well, what do we do? So they went to Moses, and Moses is like, what do we do?
Yeah.
Goes to God.
When it's the same thing where a man by the name of Zelophehad had 5 daughters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5 daughters and no sons to inherit.
Right. So what? Yeah. So it wasn't even a death. It was, what do I do with
So
this?
what? Yeah. So, and the daughters say,
how does the name carry on?
Yeah. How do we keep our dad's? Because if we get married, our father's land, there, and when you get to the Jubilee year, there's no one to give it back to.
Yeah. Right.
So how do we do this?
Yeah. So the answer that I got out of it is they don't want to confuse the land. So intermarrying has to happen within the same tribe.
Yep.
So you're in the same area. So the land at least returns there.
Yep.
But it was kind of nice that the land stays there.
Yeah. 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 It was a big deal. It's a big deal. The tribal lands are a big deal for the Israelites at this time, and it will be again in the, like I said, in the kingdom in the millennium.
Yeah. Well, I think about it from a farmer standpoint. There's a generational farms that are handed down, and each one certainly has issues. And the issues nowadays is, you need to get big enough that you can, make money off of your farm. And now it's a business,
Yep.
and there's only so much land. And how do you get the land, and then giving that to the next generation, and having them farm it is becoming more and more rare.
Yeah.
And it's kind of
You see that.
it's along the same vein.
Yep. Yep.
In there.
So they just had to marry within their tribe, and then it kept it as part of the tribal land, and they were going to be okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. So I have
Good.
2 bits of trivia from this week's reading.
Okay.
Okay. All right. While
How
we're
are
in
these people going to answer?
Yeah. One of them is here in chapter 36. The other one goes back to 32. If you look at the names of the 5 daughters of Zelophehad, one of them is named Noah.
Oh, did not even see it.
So here you can ask all your friends, where are the 2 places that Noah showed up in the Bible? One of them is, of course, in Genesis, Noah and the flood, and a man. But here we have in Numbers 36, we have a woman named Noah.
Wow.
And fun stuff. But
Turns out when I read names like that, I just kind of
skip over.
I really try to read them, but there's no retention.
I actually know some. This is not my second one, but this is it's like 1.5.
Okay.
I actually know a lady named Tirzah. She was named after one of the daughters of Zelophehad.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right, second piece of trivia. There are a lot of sayings that we have in that come directly from the Bible, right? And this is one that if you just sort of gloss over it, you might miss it. But in chapter 32, verse 23, your sin will find you out.
Your sin will find you out.
Yep. Have you ever heard that?
No.
So there's a you have sinned against it, and your sin will find you out. I heard this when I was growing up. Your sin will find you out, and it's just this thing. Be sure. That's how it was said. Be sure your sin will find you out. And if you've heard that before, you may not have known that it comes from the Bible, and it's in Numbers 32. And I've been waiting for 8 weeks.
And I ruined it for him.
No, that's good. I've been waiting for 8 weeks to, because I knew it was here at the end of Numbers, and to see if you would see that. So,
Good.
Be sure your sin will find you out.
Yeah. Well, it kind of goes in with don't give the devil a foothold.
Yeah.
Right. And
It's one of those types of
along
sayings.
with those types of things.
Yep.
Yeah.
And some people have heard of them, and some people haven't. It was one that I heard a lot when I was growing up. Maybe that says something about me.
That's a Baptist.
But yeah, exactly. It's the devil a foothold. That's Ephesians 4. This one is November. Numbers 32.
Yeah.
And so if you don't see, you'll see it now, but I wanted to point that out. Anyway, 2 bits of trivia.
Yeah. Good.
As we wrap up Numbers.
Certainly maybe fun's not the right word, but a great book to go through.
Yeah. Yeah, we've learned a lot. We've really
exactly.
learned a lot about God and why He does what He does. And there have been some really good questions that have come up because of this reading through. So I hope that you've, well, like you said, not particularly fun, but I hope that you've enjoyed it enough, and it's caused you to think, and that you've learned a lot. And next time we'll start a new book. Yeah. But until then, if you do have questions, make sure that you can comment here on the video, email, text, whatever. We're happy to answer those for you. And we also love to hear what you learned. What are some of the things, we don't talk about everything, what are some of the things that your big takeaway? We love to hear that. So make sure that you share that with us and share this with your friends and family. And we'll see you back here next time.
Bye, everybody.